On this episode, I'm going to share with you the eviction process and how you go about evicting a tenant. Welcome everyone to this episode of the AskJasonGelios show. I'm Jason Gelios, Michigan Realtor. Really appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode. Got a great question, and that's how does the eviction process work? If I'm a landlord, how the heck do I evict my tenant or at least get the process started? All right, and so I'm gonna share with you the steps. Now, these are basic steps, basic process, okay? Certain things could happen. Of course, you always want to consult with an attorney who is an expert in landlord-tenant disputes, okay? Now, before we dive into this though, if you could go ahead and do me a huge favor and follow me on social media, and all those links are actually below in the description. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss out on future videos that I upload. Now, let's go ahead and dive into this, okay? So how the eviction process works, okay? Number one is the lease agreement is signed by both parties. So you have a landlord and you have a tenant, and they agree on a lease agreement. Usually the landlord has one and the tenant reviews it and decides whether or not they want the place or not, okay? So the lease agreement is signed. The lease starts, tenant moves in, boom. Number two, problem arises, something happens, right? Tenant didn't pay on time, or they're paying late, or they're not paying at all. They're causing a disturbance. Whatever the case may be, they're in violation of the agreement. Something happens and the landlord usually confronts them and says, hey, there's an issue. Number three, landlord and tenant try to resolve issues on their own. They should always resolve it on their own, right? Or at least try to, okay? Talk it out, see, hey, what can we do? Okay, for example, a late payment, maybe just something happened and the landlord can work with the tenant or tenants, okay? Well, number four is if the landlord and the tenant do not agree on something, they don't agree on a resolution, then it goes to court, okay? Landlord gets that ball rolling and you end up in court. Number five is a complaint is filed in court. Okay, so a formal complaint gets filed and the tenant becomes aware that, hey, okay, just like number four where, yeah, they do go to court. Actually, number 4 and 5 kind of blend together because the landlord files the complaint and then they go to court, okay? Number 6, eviction notice is sent. If it gets this far, okay, an eviction notice is sent to the actual tenant or tenants. It's usually sent certified mail, although they always recommend that even though it gets sent by the court, that you, the landlord, if you're watching and you're a landlord, you should actually post it on their door or try to give it to them by hand, although avoid confrontation, right? Number 7, okay, when you're at court, the judge makes a decision. So they see how the tenant reacts, what are they proposing, this and that, and the judge makes a decision. Now, at this point, one of two things happens, okay? One, the tenant wins and stays. Okay, so there you go, they stay, the landlord might not want to renew your lease at the end of it, but hey, tenant won, right? Maybe it was a dispute that the tenant did not do anything wrong, or they provided a great explanation to the court, the judge, okay? Now, the other option is, hey, the landlord wins and the tenant leaves, okay? So if the landlord wins, okay, then what happens is the judge issues a court order, or what they call a warrant of eviction, okay? And the judge throws that hammer down. The tenant can either leave voluntarily, like, hey, fine, I'll leave within the time, or if they won't leave, then the sheriff comes and basically evicts them forcibly, tells them to get their belongings, get out. You don't have any certain amount of time. You just, well, maybe the sheriff's deputies will give you 20 minutes, half an hour, right? But that at that point, that usually means you get out or you go to jail. Now, the tenant may need to pay the landlord based on the lease agreement or local law, okay? Some other things that I've actually personally seen, because we've had to almost evict somebody, and Typically a tenant, if they lose in court, they have to pay court costs, attorney fees, unpaid rent or damages, things like that. Penalties, there are typically penalties, I can tell you, being on the landlord side for a property, that there are penalties. For example, if a tenant has to make a payment plan, right, makes payments to the landlord, then there's usually interest on top of that. So this is just the basic process. And to dive in to get legal advice, you should really consult with an attorney. I'd be happy to refer you one if you need a referral. But basically, this is the absolute basic process of how the eviction process works. Hopefully, you watching, you're not on the end of an eviction process. That it's never a good thing. I think, ultimately, it boils down to whether or not an issue with a landlord or tenant is resolved or not. So I hope you guys found this episode valuable. Hey, if you did, be sure to hit that like button. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out on future episodes. If you'd like to get this in your email once a week, then go ahead and visit my website, it'sallabouttherealestate.com, where a pop-up comes up and you can enter in your information, and it's free. You get emailed this once a week in your inbox. So I'm Jason Gelios, Michigan Realtor, and I really hope you guys have a good week. Thanks everyone for watching this episode of the Ask Jason Gelios Show. Be sure to visit the links in the description below to pick up your copy of my real estate book, Think Like a Realtor. It's a little book about buying and selling residential real estate through the eyes of a realtor. It's real world advice, tips, whether you're a new agent in the business or you are a home buyer or even looking to sell a home. This is great advice. So I really appreciate it if you guys visit those links, pick up your copy, and go ahead and share a review, good or bad, if you like it, if you hate it, okay? But get your copy today. Thank you.